They say you remember the way people make you feel more than what they said. But I remember exactly what she said that day. We were at the cabin in Colorado. It was August. Not too hot, just enough breeze off the river to keep the tablecloths from sticking to the wood. The kind of summer weather that tricks you into thinking everything's fine. My mother, Linda Thompson, had just refilled her wine glass. She was wearing her favorite river earrings, turquoise drops shaped like tiny leaves. When she stood and tapped at the side of her glass, I thought she was going to say something about Dad. It would have been 10 years next week. Or maybe she'd say something about family togetherness, the usual. But no. She looked at my sister Sarah and said to the only child who stayed loyal. There was a pause, like the room hadn't caught up yet. Then came the laughter, nervous at first, then full. My cousins clapped. Uncle Robert let out a whistle. Sarah smiled the way she always did when things went her way small, like she didn't want to gloat, but she did. I didn't say anything. I just stood there behind the grill tongs, in one hand, napkin in the other. I wasn't in a single photo that day, not from what I could see. When Aunt Ellen asked if I could take one of her and the girls, she handed me the phone without a second glance. No one noticed when I slipped inside. Back in the hallway, I opened my laptop, slid the file into the presentation queue behind the family slideshow Sarah had prepared. No one knew I'd added my own version. No one asked. When I walked back out, my mother caught my eye across the table. She smiled like everything was fine. I smiled back. "You'll remember this day," I said quietly. "Just not how you think." 10 minutes later, I played the video. 20 minutes after that, no one at the table could look each other in the eye. My name is Quinn Thompson. I'm 38. I used to teach 8th grade English in Oregon. These days, I work freelance editing manuscripts, writing small things for small places. It doesn't sound like much, but I've built something that's mine quietly and without permission. I'm the older one. Sarah is 3 years younger. When we were kids, people used to say we balanced each other out. I was the steady one. Books, quiet rooms, early bedtimes. Sarah was all movement, barefoot in the yard, singing at the top of her lungs, bleeding from knees she didn't bother to patch. Mom Linda used to laugh when Sarah interrupted dinner to show off a play she'd written in the garage. She clapped the loudest. I remember that. I remember watching her face. When I brought home straight A's, she'd nod. "I never had to worry about you," she'd say. And then she'd turn to Sarah, who'd failed her math test, and hug her so tightly, like failing was somehow braver than passing. I used to think that was love. That what we needed most determined how much we were given. I didn't need much, so I didn't get much. It made sense back then, but the older I got, the more that kind of love felt like an agreement I hadn't signed. Dad James Thompson was the quiet one, a machinist who built boats in his free time. He never raised his voice in that house. He wasn't affectionate in the way people write poems about, but he showed up every school concert, every late-night ride to pick me up from rehearsal. He once told me in the garage one winter that he liked the way I watched people. "You see what's missing, Quinn." He said, "That's a gift. Just don't let it turn into a burden." He passed away 10 years ago. A quiet heart attack in the driveway while loading groceries. After that, the house got quieter in some ways, louder in others, and the space between me and my mother that had always been there suddenly felt permanent. After Dad died, things shifted fast. Sarah moved back home within 3 months. She said she needed to be close. She brought a new boyfriend with her, then another, then none at all. She was 28 and still searching, Mom said. Still soft. Still healing. I lived 2 states over in a small town outside Boise. I called. I sent flowers that first Christmas, drove down for Easter brunch, and found out they'd already eaten. Mom waved it off. "I thought you weren't coming. You never confirmed things." That wasn't true, but I let it pass. You learn after a while which arguments are just delays dressed as conversations. A year later, Sarah's marriage fell apart. I don't know the details. One day there were photos of the wedding on the fridge, and the next, a cardboard box of her things by the door. She didn't cry much, just moved back into her old room and called it a reset. Linda letter said nothing about the car Sarah dented in the driveway or the utilities she forgot to pay. Family is family. She said Sarah needs time. When I visited, my old bedroom had changed. Mom turned it into a sewing room fabric stacked on the bedpins, stuck in every cushion. "Oh, you still wanted to sleep here?" she asked. "I can clear some space on the floor. I stayed in a motel that night. Just said I had a lot of work calls." What I didn't say last year, I paid for a chunk of the cabin roof. I sent money without being asked. A quiet gift. Not once did Mom mention it. But when Sarah bought patio lights with Linda's card, she got a thank you dinner. I've learned something about invisibility. It's not just being left out of the photo. Sometimes it's standing in the frame, smiling, and watching someone else's name appear on the caption, and slowly even your reflection starts to blur. It started with an email rejection. A small Northwest journal I'd pitched a story to a piece about daughters who disappear in plain sight wrote back to say they'd already received an almost identical submission. Same premise, same phrasing, even the same title. I asked for clarification. They sent a copy. The name on the byline, S. Thompson. I stared at it for a long time. Sarah never wrote, "not seriously." She journaled about breakups and grocery lists. She once called semicolons fancy commas. But there it was in print, my voice wearing her name. A week later, I lost a spot at a writing retreat. A friend from college had invited me months ago. Suddenly, she backed out. Said the retreat had a reputation to protect. Wouldn't say more. It didn't make sense. I'd never missed a deadline, never turned in sloppy work, but something had shifted. Quiet, subtle. That same week, I saw Sarah tagged in a post from that friend. A wine night. Smiles, candles, new connections. I asked Mom if she knew anything. She blinked slowly as if I'd asked something strange. "Sarah's just putting herself out there." "You used to be like that, remember?" No, I didn't remember because I never had that kind of permission. I began to realize how far the echo reached. I found out the family group chat had been renamed. I was no longer in it. When Aunt Ellen asked if I could help proofread her church newsletter, Sarah replied instead. Sent in my old template. Even used my intro paragraph. I didn't know whether to be angry or tired. It felt like I'd dropped my keys somewhere in a house that used to be mine. And now every room was locked from the inside. The worst part wasn't that Sarah was taking my words. It was how easily the people around her believed they'd been hers all along. It was late spring when I drove up to Montana to the cottage where Grandma Helen used to live. She passed 5 years ago, but the house had stayed in the family mostly empty now, a place we were keeping for summer, though no one really came. I needed air somewhere that didn't smell like old wine in comparison. The cottage was as I remembered, low ceilings, pale curtains, a screen door that never quite latched. I cleaned out the pantry swept dust from the floorboards and found myself in the attic by accident, chasing a draft that turned out to be a loose window latch. That's where I found the box. It was tucked behind a stack of winter quilts. Nothing special on the outside, just a banker's box with yellowed tape. Inside were letters, photos, brittle receipts. I wouldn't have looked twice if I hadn't seen my mother's name in Grandma's handwriting. Linda June, 1979. I sat down on the attic floor and read slowly, carefully. Each letter was to Grandma Helen's sister, my great-aunt Margaret. They weren't dramatic, not even angry, but they were honest in a way I'd never heard from anyone in my family. Linda's trying with Quinn, but I can see her drifting. One letter said she wants to connect, but it's easier with Sarah. Sarah mirrors her. Quinn makes her confront things she's never faced in herself. Another one dated 2 years later. Quinn is quiet, yes, but she notices everything. I think that unnerves Linda. She doesn't like being watched unless she's ready to perform. I read those lines 5 times. 6. I didn't cry. It wasn't that kind of moment, but something heavy inside me clicked loose. At the bottom of the box were old photos. One from my 5th birthday, Sarah, at the front with cake on her chin, me half-shadowed in the back. Then the original version, the same photo uncropped. I stared at myself in that corner, slightly blurry but still there. It wasn't just Sarah who had rewritten things. It started much earlier than I'd thought. The invitation came by email, one of those group messages sent to too many people with too few details. Subject Thompson, family reunion, summer at the river. It was signed Love Linda and Sarah, as if that was a natural pairing, as if those two names had always hosted this family. I hadn't been invited in years, not formally. I'd shown up once unannounced, only to find the schedule had changed. Different weekend, different guest list. No one had told me, but this time I was included almost like they'd forgotten to leave me out. Sarah was organizing the slideshow. She called it family through the years. I emailed her to ask if she wanted some photos. Childhood birthdays, camping trips with dad-old snapshots of Grandma Helen at the beach. She replied 4 days later, "I think we're good, just trying to keep it current." You know how people hate long slideshows. I didn't answer. I scanned through the photos on my own, wondering when my face had started looking like someone else's memory. Mom called 2 weeks before the reunion. Said she was so glad I could come this year. Sarah's really been doing so much for this family, she said. She stepped up in ways I never imagined. I bit my lip and said nothing. I wondered what stepping up meant, using my words, wearing my voice being seen. I almost didn't go, but something in me, maybe that old part that used to win spelling bees and stay late to clean up the classroom, wanted to show up to look them all in the eye and know at least once I hadn't disappeared by choice. I brought my own slideshow, not dramatic, just a file on a flash drive quietly slipped into the presentation queue. I didn't know if I'd use it. I only knew I had to be ready. When I arrived that afternoon, the river shimmered just like always. The porch was full of folding chairs. The grill was already lit. My mother hugged me like we hadn't skipped anything. But in her eyes, there was a flicker, something rehearsed. I caught them by the garage, Sarah and Uncle Robert. He was holding a beer in one hand and gesturing with the other like he was offering advice she didn't ask for. She smiled, tilted her head, touched his elbow lightly. I didn't hear much, just fragments. Quinn's always been delicate about this stuff. She takes things too seriously. You know how she is. That was enough. Uncle Robert saw me a few minutes later near the cooler. He didn't say hello, just nodded like I was someone he used to work with. The next morning, I woke up to an email. The publisher contact he'd promised to introduce me to gone. Things fell through, he wrote. Might not be the right fit after all. I didn't reply. Instead, I checked the shared family calendar. There was a note Sarah had added weeks earlier. Asked Robert about Quinn's proposal. Not urgent. The cabin had never felt smaller. People brushing past each other in hallways, laughing too loudly, passing me paper plates without making eye contact. I'd brought brownies. No one touched them. Mom floated from guest to guest in her river earrings, glass in hand, smiling like nothing ever needed to be explained. When she passed me, she paused just long enough to say, "You look tired, honey. Are you sleeping enough?" I smiled, said yes. But what I wanted to ask was this. When did I become a story they told behind closed doors? And how many of those stories started with the words, "You know how Quinn is"? Dinner was served on long folding tables dressed with linen runners and mismatched wildflowers. Someone played soft jazz from a speaker near the porch steps. The sun was low, painting everything gold like it wanted us to believe this was a perfect day. Mom stood slowly, her glass lifted just above shoulder height. "I want to take a moment," she said, "to honor someone who's been my rock, my helper, my loyal one." There was a beat of silence before she turned to Sarah and smiled to the only child who stayed loyal. Applause, laughter, the scraping of chairs as people turned to look at her. Sarah did her shy smile again, the one she wore like a soft badge. Her shoulders curled inward like she didn't expect it, but of course she did. I didn't move. Aunt Ellen leaned over and asked if I'd take a photo of the table. I nodded, lifted her phone, pressed the button, then I walked back inside. The air conditioning hummed like a held breath. I opened the laptop near the drink station where the slideshow was queued up and waiting. Sarah's version was first edited, smooth, full of bright faces and perfect poses. My name appeared once, maybe twice, blurred, smiling in the back. I added mine to the queue quietly without erasing hers. 10 minutes later, everyone was called inside for a quick trip down memory lane. They filed in, sun-warmed and wine-happy plates still full. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered. First hers. Photos of birthdays, graduations, beach days. Sarah laughing, Sarah dancing, Mom hugging her. Dad present, but always off to the side. No one seemed to notice what was missing until the file changed. Black screen, then Quinn Thompson. A different story. And beneath it, sometimes what's cropped out matters more than what's left in. I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I stood at the back of the room and waited. The first slide was familiar because they'd seen it before. My 5th birthday. The version Sarah had used showed her in front cake smeared on her chin confetti and her hair. I was barely in the frame. But this time the full photo appeared uncropped. I was sitting to the side holding the knife, the one who had cut the cake. My name was on the banner, not hers. Slide 2. A letter scanned and faded in Grandma Helen's cursive. Her words filled the screen. Quinn sees more than she says. Linda finds that unsettling. I think Sarah is easier. Silence spread like fog. Then came the audio faint. At first, just voices over the crackle of a porch call. I'd recorded it 3 months ago. Sarah's voice talking to Uncle Robert. Quinn still thinks she's the smart one. It's kind of sad, really. She never realized being right isn't the same as being wanted. Gasps 1 or 2 a hand over a mouth. Slide for the credit card report. Charges from a boutique in Denver, hotel bookings, dinners for 2. All under my name, all paid by me. My old joint account left open and forgotten until someone remembered the login. Next photos of family events, reunions, birthdays, weddings. Each one had been cropped the same way. I had the originals. I showed them all frame by frame, name by missing name. In the back row, Aunt Ellen dropped her glass. Someone moved to help her. No one said anything. And at the center of the room, Sarah sat frozen. Her hands were still, her eyes scanning for a cue, a line away out. There wasn't one. The last slide was simple. A picture of me and Dad in the garage holding up a wooden sailboat. We weren't smiling, just focused hands full of sawdust and quiet. And beneath it, some things were never supposed to be erased. I let the room sit with it. I didn't cry. I didn't watch my mother's face. I just stood there, letting the silence be mine for once. When the lights came back on, no one clapped. Sarah stood slowly. Her mouth opened like she meant to explain something, but the words didn't come. Her hands hovered near her chest, empty. Uncle Robert looked away. Aunt Ellen whispered something to her husband and left the room. Only Mom remained still, glass in hand, back straight. Her face unreadable in that practiced way I'd seen all my life. She didn't say my name, didn't ask why I'd done it. She just said, "You didn't have to embarrass her like that. Not me, not us, just her." I looked at her, really looked. The turquoise earrings, the wine glass she never refilled but always held. And for the first time, I understood something I hadn't let myself name. She had known not all of it, maybe, but enough. The charges, the job leads that slipped away the way I disappeared from photos like I'd been too hard to place. It hadn't been about loyalty. Not really. It had been about comfort. Sarah didn't ask questions. I did. And asking questions in our family had always been a kind of betrayal. I didn't do it to embarrass her, I said. I kept my voice even, not angry. Just true. I did it because you were never going to stop pretending. Mom didn't respond. She turned her head toward the window where the river shimmered in the early dusk. Someone cleared their throat. A cousin. Then a shuffle of chairs. The spell broke, but the air stayed heavy. I walked outside before dessert. The air was cooler now, and someone had started packing up the folding tables. From the porch, I heard Sarah crying. Soft, practiced. I didn't go to her. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove until the river was just a sound memory, until even the pine trees felt like they belonged to someone else. 3 days passed before Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. Listened to it twice before deleting. You've made things complicated, Quinn. I just wish you'd handled it differently. I thought you were stronger than this. No apology. No, I didn't know. Just a shift of blame so smooth you'd miss it if you weren't paying attention. 2 days later, she sent an email. A single line. Despite everything, I still love you. Despite I didn't answer. What could I say that hadn't already been buried beneath years of almost and not quits? Sarah never reached out. Maybe she thought silence was the better look. Maybe she believed she'd still come out clean. Uncle Robert unfollowed me on everything. Aunt Ellen sent me a message that said simply, I had no idea. I'm sorry. I didn't know whether to believe her. A week later, a small box arrived on my doorstep. Inside was a photo frame glass, heavy the good kind. No note, just a picture tucked inside. It was me and Dad again in the garage. The same one from the end of the slideshow. But this time, someone had cleaned up the image, cropped it tight. Just our hands on the wood sawdust in the air. No faces, no noise, just work. Quiet, steady. I don't know who sent it. Maybe it was Mom. Maybe someone else. But it sits on my shelf now. Not because I need proof, because I need the reminder. There was a time when I was seen, not explained, not rewritten, just seen. And maybe that's all I ever wanted. The reunion photo went up 2 weeks later. Someone tagged me, probably by mistake. I wasn't in it. There was an empty chair where I had been sitting. Sarah had moved into frame. Mom had her hand on her shoulder. Everyone looked full-flushed like they'd eaten well. I didn't save the picture. I didn't need the reminder. That Sunday, I made peach cobbler from scratch. My kitchen smelled like cinnamon and something close to forgiveness. I watched the syrup bubble at the edges and didn't think about who else would taste it. I ate it warm by myself from a chipped plate I'd had since college. No candles, no toast, just me. There are things I'll never get back. Rooms I'll never be invited into again. Stories already rewritten too many times to pull apart. But there's something freeing in knowing I'm no longer required to stay silent just to keep the peace. I don't know what my mother tells people now. Maybe that I was dramatic sensitive, too smart for my own good. Maybe that I disappeared. But I didn't disappear. I just stopped standing in rooms that pretended I wasn't there. I left before dessert. I didn't say goodbye. Quinn Thompson learns that her invisibility in her family stems from their preference for comfort over truth. Her mother and sister's favoritism, coupled with their erasure of her contributions, reveals a pattern of denial that Quinn's questions threaten. By presenting her slideshow, she reclaims her voice, exposing the family's selective narrative. The lesson is bittersweet. She can't undo the years of being overlooked, but she finds freedom in refusing to remain silent. Quinn realizes her worth doesn't depend on their validation, choosing to define herself outside rooms that rewrite her existence, embracing her own quiet strength.
Still working from home, Emma. My sister Sophia's voice dripped with false sympathy. You know, I could probably get you an entry-level position at my firm. Something to get you started. I smiled politely across our parents' dinner table, where the family had gathered for our monthly ritual of thinly veiled competition. I'm doing fine, thanks. Leave her alone, my brother Marcus chimed in, though his defense wasn't much better. Not everyone is cut out for the corporate world. At least she's trying something. If they only knew that while they were climbing corporate ladders, I was building an elevator. I'm Emma Chin, though the business world knows me only as E.C. Stone, the reclusive founder of Stone Enterprises. My siblings saw me as the family failure, the quiet one who worked from her home office in sweatpants while they collected accolades in corner offices. Sophia ran operations at Goldman Sachs. Marcus had just made partner at his consulting firm. Meanwhile, I was still figuring things out, according to our mother's careful explanations to family friends. I just worry about your future, Mom said now, passing the green beans. Your sister's firm has excellent benefits. I have benefits, Mom, including ownership of a company worth more than both my siblings' firms combined. But that wasn't dinner table conversation. From your little online business? Sophia laughed. Emma, be serious. You need real security. I thought about the security detail parked discreetly outside our parents' house. Not that my family knew they were there to protect me, not them. Sometimes being underestimated was its own kind of security. The conversation shifted to Marcus's latest acquisition deal, something he was terribly proud of. I hid my smile behind my wine glass, remembering how I'd anonymously outbid him for a tech startup last month. He still didn't know why he'd lost that deal. It's a jungle out there, he proclaimed, gesturing with his fork. You have to be aggressive, take what you want. That's why Emma's approach will never work. The business world isn't kind to people who hide behind their computers. If he only knew how many times he'd lost deals to someone hiding behind a computer. I'd started Stone Enterprises 7 years ago, working from my apartment with nothing but a laptop and an idea. While my siblings chased prestigious titles in corner offices, I'd built something different, a technology empire that operated entirely in the shadows. No public appearances, no press releases with my face, no LinkedIn profile for people to analyze, just results. The idea came to me during a family dinner much like this one, 3 years into my siblings' successful careers and my apparent failure to launch. I just closed my first major contract, a deal worth more than Sophia's annual salary, but the client insisted on complete confidentiality. That night, watching my family pity me while celebrating my siblings' minor victories, I realized something. Anonymity wasn't a weakness, it was power. So I built my company in silence. Every contract, every acquisition, every innovation happened behind the scenes. Stone Enterprises became known for its efficiency, its innovation, and most importantly, its mystery. The business world buzzed with theories about EC Stone. Was it a group of investors? A foreign consortium? A reclusive genius? No one suspected it was the quiet woman who worked from home in her comfortable pants, listening to her siblings brag about their modest successes. At least tell me you're saving for retirement, my father said, breaking into my thoughts. I nodded. I put a little away, a little being a few billion in various investments, but who was counting? Speaking of investments, Sophia straightened importantly. Have you all heard of Stone Enterprises? They just acquired half the tech companies in the valley. Nobody knows who's behind it, but they're changing the entire industry landscape. I took another sip of wine to hide my expression. Probably some old men in suits, Marcus said dismissively. The real players, the ones who matter, show their faces. Actually, I found myself saying, I heard Stone Enterprises is run by a woman. Sophia snorted. Please. No woman would hide if she had that kind of success. We have to work twice as hard to be seen as equal. Whoever's behind Stone is definitely a man. If she only knew how many times she'd been on conference calls with me, never realizing that the modulated voice of EC Stone belonged to her little sister. Well, Mom said brightly, clearly trying to include me in the conversation. Maybe Emma could learn something from them. About business, I mean. I smiled. Maybe I could. After dinner, as my siblings prepared to return to their prestigious offices and expensive apartments, Sophia pulled me aside. I know it's hard, she said, her voice gentle with pity, watching everyone else succeed while you're still. Finding your way, but you'll get there. Maybe not to our level, but somewhere comfortable. I hugged her, partly to hide my face. Thanks, Sophia. That means a lot. As I watched them drive away in their luxury cars, I checked my phone. 3 urgent messages about a billion-dollar acquisition we were finalizing tomorrow. A notification about our stock price hitting another record high. And an email confirming my latest property purchase, a small tech campus in Silicon Valley that both my siblings had tried to acquire for their respective firms. I sent a quick reply authorizing the final paperwork, then texted my driver to pick me up. Tomorrow would be interesting. Stone Enterprises was about to reshape the tech industry again, and my siblings would never know they'd been having dinner with the person they both feared and admired. Sometimes the best success is the kind nobody sees coming, and I was just getting started. The morning after our family dinner, I sat in my home office, not the cozy workspace my family imagined, but a state-of-the-art command center that occupied the entire top floor of my penthouse. 3 monitors displayed real-time market data, while a 4th showed a video feed of my siblings' firm's stock prices. Both were dropping. Miss Stone, my assistant's voice came through the secure line. Only 5 people knew my real identity, and Sarah was one of them. Marcus Chen's firm is requesting an urgent meeting about the Silicon Valley acquisition. I smiled, imagining my brother's face when he realized he'd lost another deal to the mysterious E.C. Stone. Schedule it for tomorrow. Video conference only. And your sister's team at Goldman? Let them sweat for a few days. They need to learn that Stone Enterprises won't be pushed around by investment banks. I spent the morning reviewing acquisition targets, including several that both Marcus and Sophia had their eyes on. My siblings might be successful by most standards, but they thought too small, too conventionally. While they fought over individual companies, I was quietly building an ecosystem. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Emergency family dinner tonight. Need to discuss something important. I could guess what this was about. Stone Enterprises' latest moves had the entire industry rattled, and Sophia hated not being in control. That evening, I arrived at our parents' house to find Sophia pacing the living room while Marcus sat slumped in an armchair, looking defeated. "Oh good, you're here," Sophia said distractedly. "Though I'm not sure why Mom insisted on including you in this discussion." Mom emerged from the kitchen, frowning. "Sophia, your sister is family. She should know if something's wrong." "What's going on?" I asked, though I knew exactly what was happening. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "Stone Enterprises. They're destroying us. Every deal, every acquisition we try to make, they're there first. With better terms, better technology, better everything. Nobody knows who they are," Sophia added frantically. "How are we supposed to compete with a ghost?" I settled into the couch, watching my successful siblings unravel. "Maybe they're just better at business than you are." Sophia whirled on me. "What would you know about it? You've never had to compete in the real business world. You sit at home all day doing whatever it is you do." If she only knew that during our last family dinner, I'd been negotiating a deal on my phone that would effectively cut her department's revenue in half. "I read the news," I said mildly. "Stone Enterprises seems to be innovating while everyone else is just reacting." Marcus snorted. Easy to say from the sidelines. This E.C. Stone character is a coward, hiding behind lawyers and proxies. Real business leaders show their faces. I thought about the modulated voice I used for video conferences, the elaborate security measures that kept my identity secret. Maybe they just care more about results than recognition. "Well, their results are killing us," Sophia snapped. "I might lose my promotion over this. The partner track I've worked towards for years Gone because some faceless entity decided to play God with the market. And my firm, Marcus added glumly. We're hemorrhaging clients to Stone's technology division. Nobody wants traditional consulting when they can get integrated solutions from the industry leader. Mom looked worried. Isn't there anything you can do? Perhaps if you work together. Sophia laughed bitterly. Nobody works with Stone Enterprises. They don't need partners. They don't need anything. It's like they can see 10 moves ahead while the rest of us are playing catch-up. I hid a smile. 10 moves was an understatement. I'd been planning this market transformation for years, watching my siblings' firms' weaknesses, understanding exactly how to disrupt their comfortable positions. Maybe, I suggested carefully, this is an opportunity to innovate, find new ways to compete. Oh, please, Sophie rolled her eyes. Stick to your little online business, Emma. This is real corporate warfare. Just then, my phone buzzed. An alert that Stone Enterprises' latest acquisition had been finalized. The one Marcus's firm had been desperately trying to secure. Excuse me, I said, standing. I need to take this. Another cat video order? Sophia asked sarcastically, assuming I ran some small e-commerce site. I stepped into the hallway, approved the final paperwork with my digital signature, and effectively ended my brother's firm's last chance at competing in the tech consulting space. When I returned, Marcus was staring at his phone in horror. It's done. Stone got them. Wilson Tech is officially part of their empire. Sophia looked stricken. That was your firm's last shot at? I know, he snapped. God, I'd give anything to meet this E.C. Stone character. Just 5 minutes to understand how they think, how they operate. I sat back down, enjoying the irony. Maybe you already have. What's that supposed to mean? Sophia demanded. Just that Stone Enterprises seems to understand something you don't. Success doesn't always wear a power suit and corner office. As my siblings launched into another round of complaints about the mysterious company destroying their careers, I checked my calendar. Tomorrow's video conference with Marcus's firm would be interesting. I wondered if he'd recognize anything in E.C. Stone's modulated voice, any hint of his little sister's inflections. Probably not. People tend to see what they expect to see, or in my case, not see what they've dismissed. I need a drink, Sophia announced. Emma, be a dear and get me some wine. At least you're good at serving drinks. I stood, happy to escape to the kitchen. Let them enjoy their condescension while they could. Tomorrow, Stone Enterprises would announce its biggest move yet, one that would change the entire industry landscape. And my siblings still wouldn't suspect that their greatest business rival was the same person they just sent to fetch their wine. The day of the Stone Enterprises global announcement arrived with a sense of destiny. I sat in my home office, watching financial news channels buzz with speculation. The business world knew something big was coming. They just didn't know what, or who. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Sophia and Marcus had been texting frantically, sharing rumors and fears about Stone's next move. Their careers, their reputations, everything they'd built hung in the balance. Miss Stone, Sarah's voice came through the intercom. Everything is prepared for the announcement. Are you sure about this? I smiled, touching the small photo on my desk, the only personal item in my otherwise pristine office. It showed my family at last month's dinner, all of them looking at me with that familiar mixture of pity and dismissal. Yes, I said, it's time. The announcement was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:45, I received a panicked call from Sophia. Emma, I know you don't understand business, but I need you to listen, she said, her voice tight with stress. Something big is happening. The whole family needs to be together. Come to my office now. Your office? I asked innocently. Yes, the one at Goldman Sachs. You know, the real office where real business happens. I checked my watch. Actually, Sophia, I think you should come to my office instead. She laughed sharply. Your home office? Emma, this is serious. Stone Enterprises is about to. I know exactly what Stone Enterprises is about to do, I interrupted calmly. And if you want to understand it, you'll come to my address. Bring Marcus. Something in my voice must have caught her attention. For the first time in years, she actually listened to me. Fine, she said after a pause. Send the address. I texted her the details for my penthouse. Let them think it was just an apartment. The surprise would be better that way. At 1:55 p.m., my security team alerted me that my siblings had arrived. I watched on the monitors as they entered the private elevator, both looking confused at the high-end security measures. When they stepped into my office suite, their expressions were priceless. What is this? Marcus stammered, taking in the wall of screens, the state-of-the-art technology, the commanding view of the city. My home office, I said simply, standing behind my desk, where I've been hiding all these years. Sophia's eyes darted around the room, her quick mind starting to piece things together. Emma, what's going on? Please, sit. I gestured to the chairs in front of my desk. The announcement is about to begin. On cue, the main screen lit up with the Stone Enterprises logo. Global financial news channels all switched to the feed simultaneously. Today, I said, pressing a button that activated my familiar modulated voice, Stone Enterprises will reveal its true identity. My siblings froze, recognition dawning in their eyes, as they heard the voice they'd been competing against for years. No, Sophia whispered, it's not possible. I pressed another button, and my face appeared on screens worldwide. My name is Emma Chen. You know me as E.C. Stone. The silence in my office was deafening. The little sister, Marcus said numbly. All this time, while you were building your reputations, I continued, my normal voice returning. I was building an empire. One that didn't need corner offices or power suits to change the world. Sophia stood abruptly. The Wilson Tech deal. The Silicon Valley acquisitions. Everything we lost. Was to your little sister who works from home, I finished. The one you pitied for not understanding real business. The global announcement continued on the screens, but my siblings weren't watching anymore. They were seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time. Why? Marcus asked. Why hide it from us? I considered the question, because you taught me the value of being underestimated. Every time you dismissed me, every time you treated me like I was less than you, I grew stronger, smarter, more determined. And now, Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. Now, I smiled. Stone Enterprises is acquiring controlling interest in both your firms. Your boards have already approved the deals. As of 3 minutes ago, you both work for me. Marcus collapsed into a chair. Sophia looked like she might faint. Don't worry, I continued. You can keep your corner offices, your prestigious titles, but make no mistake, the real power, the real success, was never in the things you could see. It was in what you refused to see. My phone buzzed. Congratulatory messages pouring in from business leaders worldwide. The mysterious E.C. Stone was mysterious no more, and the business world was reeling. The family dinner this Sunday should be interesting, I mused. Though I think it's my turn to host. What do you say? We can discuss your new roles in my organization. They stared at me, these successful siblings who had spent years pitying their failure of a sister. I could almost see them replaying every dismissive comment, every condescending offer of help, every moment they'd underestimated me. One more thing, I added, unable to resist. I prefer my coffee black, 2 sugars. Since you'll both be reporting to me now, you should probably remember that. The look on their faces was better than any corner office could ever be. Later that evening, after the global business world had finished exploding with the news, I sat in my office enjoying a quiet moment of triumph. My parents had called, alternating between shock, pride, and profuse apologies for ever doubting me. Sarah brought in a final report for the day. The stock market's response was even better than we projected. Your siblings' firms are already showing improved numbers under Stone leadership. I nodded, looking out at the city lights. Success isn't always about being seen. Sometimes it's about seeing what others don't. And your family? She asked carefully. I smiled, thinking of the upcoming Sunday dinner. They're seeing things very differently now. On my desk, next to the family photo, I placed a new nameplate, Emma Chen, E.C. Stone. A reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch most carefully. Because while they're watching you succeed, you might be building an empire they never saw coming. The mahogany doors of Harrison Industries loomed before me, just as imposing as they were 10 years ago when my father had me escorted out by security. Today, I wasn't here as Michael Harrison's disappointing daughter. I was here as Alexandra Stone, CEO of Stone Innovations, and his company's last hope for survival. My heels clicked against the marble floor of the lobby where I'd once played as a child. The receptionist didn't recognize me. Why would she? The scared 22-year-old who'd run out of this building in tears bore little resemblance to the woman I'd become. Ms. Stone, she smiled professionally. The board is expecting you. Of course they were. When your company is bleeding $2 million a day, you don't keep your potential savior waiting. The executive elevator still required a special key card. I smiled, remembering how I used to sneak up to the top floor using the copy I'd made of my father's card. Back then, I thought if I learned enough, proved enough, he'd finally see me as more than just his little girl playing at business. I was wrong. The memory of that final confrontation rose unbidden as the elevator climbed. Absolutely not. My father's voice had filled his corner office, making the awards on his walls tremble. You're not ready to run a division. I stood my ground. The business proposal I'd spent months preparing clutched in my hands. At 22, fresh out of business school with honors, I thought I was prepared for this moment. Dad, look at the numbers. The tech division is falling behind. My proposal could revolutionize our entire approach to. What you need, he cut me off, is to start at the bottom like everyone else. Learn the business properly. I have learned it. I've worked every summer since I was 16. I've studied every aspect of. Filing paperwork and attending board meetings as my daughter isn't the same as real experience. He didn't even look at my proposal. I built this company from nothing. 30 years of hard work, of sacrifice. You think you can just walk in here with your fancy degree and take over? I don't want to take over, I protested. I just want a chance to prove. The answer is no, Alexandra. You'll start in middle management like everyone else. Maybe in 10 years, if you work hard enough, we can discuss a junior executive position. The unfairness of it stung. Mark Stevens got to run the West Coast division right out of college. Mark Stevens had real-world experience. Mark Stevens is your golf buddy's son. My father's face hardened. That's enough. This discussion is over. But for once, I didn't back down. You'll never see me as anything but your little girl, will you? No matter what I achieve, no matter how qualified I am. You want to know why you'll never be CEO. He stood up, his voice cold. Because you're too emotional, too impulsive. Running a company requires discipline, strategy, patience, qualities you clearly lack. I straightened my spine. Then I'll build my own company. He actually laughed. Build your own. Do you have any idea what that takes? The years of work? The connections? The capital? I'll find a way. No, you'll fail. And when you do, don't come crying back here expecting Daddy to fix everything. I tore my proposal in half, letting the pieces fall to his immaculate carpet. I won't. His finger jabbed the security button on his desk. When you're done with this tantrum, there's an entry-level position waiting in accounting. That's my final offer. 2 security guards appeared at the door. I straightened my blazer, determined not to let him see me cry. Keep your offer, and remember this moment, Dad, because the next time you see me in this office, I won't be asking for anything. 10 years later, the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. The same paintings hung on the walls, the same plush carpet muffled my steps, but everything else had changed. Harrison Industries, once the darling of Wall Street, was on the verge of collapse. Their stock had plummeted 80% in 6 months. Their major contracts were being canceled. Their reputation was in shambles, and I owned their largest competitor. The boardroom doors opened to reveal a full house. Board members, executives, and in the center chair, my father. His hair had more gray now, new lines carved around his mouth, but his posture was as rigid as ever. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw the flash of recognition he tried to hide. Then his mask of corporate indifference slammed back into place. "Miss Stone," he said formally, "thank you for coming." I took my seat at the opposite end of the table, placing my sleek laptop before me like a shield. Let's discuss the terms of the bailout, shall we? But I had no intention of making this easy. My father was about to learn exactly what his emotional, impulsive daughter was capable of. And this time, I wouldn't be the one escorted out. The game was just beginning. The boardroom hadn't changed in 10 years. The same oversized table, the same leather chairs, even the same pretentious oil paintings of past CEOs, including my grandfather, whose stern expression seemed to judge everyone below. What had changed were the faces around the table. Gone were the confident smirks, the casual arrogance of men who thought their positions were untouchable. Now they looked tired, worried, desperate. As you can see from the projections, the CFO droned on, clicking through slides of increasingly dire financial charts. We need an immediate capital injection of at least $500 million to maintain operations. I hid my smile behind my coffee cup. I'd memorized these numbers weeks ago, when my intelligence team first flagged Harrison Industries' vulnerability. But they didn't need to know that. "And you've approached all other potential investors?" I asked innocently. My father's jaw tightened. He knew exactly why every major investment firm had turned them down. Because I had bought controlling interests in those firms through shell companies over the past 5 years. "Yes," he ground out. "Stone Innovations is our best option for immediate rescue." Best option, only option, same thing. As the CFO continued his presentation, my mind drifted back to the day I'd started building my revenge. The morning after being thrown out of Harrison Industries, I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by business journals and my laptop. My trust fund card had already been canceled. Dad's way of teaching me a lesson. I had exactly $12,467 in my personal account and a dream of making my father eat his words. My phone rang. Alexander Harrison. Speaking. This is James Morton from Venture Capital Weekly. I'm doing a piece on Harrison Industries' latest expansion. Would you comment on the rumors that you've been passed over for an executive position? I almost hung up. Then inspiration struck. Actually, I said carefully, I'm starting my own technology company. Would you be interested in that story instead? There was a pause. The daughter of Michael Harrison, striking out on her own. Yes, I'd be very interested. The article ran a week later. Harrison Harris challenges family empire. It was exactly what I needed. Attention from potential investors who'd love nothing more than to back a competitor to Harrison Industries. But I knew my father would be watching. So I did something unexpected. Instead of tech, I focused on an entirely different sector, sustainable energy. I called my company Stone Innovations, my mother's maiden name, and positioned it as far from Harrison Industries as possible. The first 2 years were brutal. I worked 18-hour days, lived on ramen noodles, and poured every penny into research and development. I hired brilliant people who'd been overlooked by bigger companies, giving them the chances they'd been denied. My first major breakthrough came when we developed a revolutionary solar panel coating that increased efficiency by 40%. Suddenly, investors weren't just interested. They were fighting to get in. I kept my identity as CEO private, using a male executive as the public face of the company. In board meetings, I was introduced as Ms. Stone, a major shareholder. No one connected me to Harrison Industries. By year 5, Stone Innovations had expanded into energy storage, smart grid technology, and sustainable infrastructure. We were growing exponentially, but I wasn't done. That's when I implemented Phase 2. Quietly, through a maze of holding companies and investment vehicles, I began acquiring shares in companies that Harrison Industries depended on. Their suppliers, their contractors, their investors. None of them knew they were selling control to the same person. I watched from afar as my father's company gradually lost ground. Their tech was becoming obsolete. Their contracts were drying up. Their stock price was dropping. And then, 3 months ago, I launched my masterstroke. Stone Innovations announced a revolutionary new microprocessor that made everything Harrison Industries produced obsolete overnight. Their stock plummeted. Clients jumped ship. Banks called in loans. Now, sitting in this boardroom, I could see the result of 10 years of careful planning. My father looked like he'd aged a decade in the past 3 months. Miss Stone. One of the board members leaned forward. What are your terms for the bailout? I opened my laptop, taking my time. Before we discuss terms, I believe full transparency is in order. I turned the screen around, showing a complex organizational chart. This diagram shows the current ownership structure of Harrison Industries' major partners and creditors. The blood drained from my father's face as he followed the lines connecting dozens of companies, all leading back to one name, Stone Innovations. As you can see, I continued smoothly, your company's survival already depends on my goodwill. The only question is whether you want to make it official. This is impossible, my father whispered. How did you build something from nothing? I finished for him, with discipline, strategy, and patience, qualities you thought I lacked. The boardroom erupted in chaos. Board members whispered furiously to each other. The CFO looked like he might faint, but I kept my eyes on my father. For the first time in my life, I saw something I'd never seen before in his expression. Fear. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because what no one in the room knew was that this meeting wasn't really about saving Harrison Industries. It was about destroying it. And I was just getting started. "This is a hostile takeover," my father finally said, his voice barely controlled. "You've orchestrated our downfall just to take control." I leaned back in my chair, letting his words hang in the air. "Actually, I didn't orchestrate your downfall. You did that yourself." With deliberate calm, I opened a second folder on my laptop and projected it onto the boardroom screen. "Let's review the past decade of Harrison Industries' decisions, shall we?" Slides appeared, showing years of missed opportunities, failed innovations, and catastrophic management choices. 2018. You rejected an acquisition of Microtech Solutions, calling their AI research speculative. They're now worth $6 billion. 2019. You ignored warnings about security vulnerabilities in your main product line, leading to the largest data breach in industry history. 2020. You pushed out your top research team because they challenged your outdated vision. Each point landed like a physical blow. The board members shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my father's gaze. "I didn't cause any of this," I continued. "I simply built a better company while you were busy protecting your ego." "You built it to destroy us," my father accused. "No." I stood up slowly. "I built it to prove a point. The same point I tried to make 10 years ago when you threw me out of this building." I walked around the table, each step measured and precise. That innovation matters more than tradition. That fresh perspectives have value. That sometimes the person you dismiss as too emotional, too impulsive, too female might actually know what she's talking about. The CFO cleared his throat nervously. "The terms of the bailout, Miss Stone?" I smiled. "There won't be a bailout." The room erupted again. My father's face turned purple. "Then why are you here?" "To offer your employees jobs." I pressed a button on my phone, and my assistant entered with a stack of folders. "Every Harrison Industries employee, from janitors to executives, will be offered a position at Stone Innovations. Same salary, better benefits, actual growth potential." "You can't do this," my father sputtered. "I already have. Your people started receiving the offers electronically 5 minutes ago." I nodded toward the windows, where employees could be seen gathering around their computers, expressions of shock and relief on their faces. "Your choice is simple," I continued. "You can file for bankruptcy and watch your employees leave en masse, or you can agree to an orderly transition under Stone Innovations' umbrella. Either way, Harrison Industries, as you know, it ceases to exist." My father stood up so abruptly his chair crashed backward. "I'd built this company. And I'd built a better one." I met his glare steadily. "Without your name, without your connections, without your help, I did exactly what you said I couldn't do." The board members were already reaching for their phones, no doubt calling their brokers to salvage what they could. My father stood alone, his empire crumbling around him. But then something unexpected happened. A quiet voice spoke from the doorway. "She tried to warn you, Michael." Everyone turned. There stood Thomas Harrison, my grandfather, the company's founder, who had retired years ago. I hadn't seen him since that day. I was thrown out. "Dad," my father started, "what are you doing here?" "I've been watching," grandfather said, walking slowly into the room. "Watching you run my company into the ground while my granddaughter built something remarkable." He turned to me. "Though I didn't know it was you until recently, Alexandra." I swallowed hard. "How did you know?" He smiled. Because you did exactly what I would have done. What I did when I started this company. You saw the future while everyone else clung to the past. My father sank into his chair. You knew? All this time? I knew someone was outmaneuvering you at every turn, Grandfather replied. I knew Stone Innovations was everything Harrison Industries should have become. When I finally figured out, it was Alexandra. He paused, and to my shock, I saw tears in his eyes. I'd never been more proud. The word proud hit me like a physical blow. All these years of planning, of working, of proving myself, somewhere along the way, revenge had stopped being the point. I'd built something that mattered, something that would last. My father looked between us, decades of certainty crumbling. I was wrong, he whispered. Yes, I said quietly. You were. The company is gone, I finished. But its people don't have to be, including you. He looked up sharply. Stone Innovations needs experienced executives, I continued. Ones who've learned from their mistakes. If you're willing to start at the bottom, learn the business properly. The irony of throwing his own words back at him wasn't lost on anyone in the room. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then slowly, he reached up and unpinned the Harrison Industries logo from his lapel. Where do I start? 6 months later, Stone Innovations moved into the Harrison building. Not because we needed it. Our headquarters was already twice the size, but because sometimes the best way to move forward is to remember where you came from. My father started in middle management, just as he'd once insisted I should. It wasn't easy for him, taking orders from people half his age, learning new technologies, admitting when he didn't know something. But he did it. Grandfather joined our board of directors, bringing decades of wisdom tempered by a newfound appreciation for innovation. Together, we transformed the old Harrison Industries into something new, something better. The mahogany doors still stand in the lobby, but now they open onto a different world. Solar panels cover the roof. The old oil paintings have been replaced by digital art. And in my office, the same one where my father once dismissed my dreams, sits my first business proposal, taped back together, framed as a reminder. Not of anger or revenge, but of what's possible when you refuse to let someone else define your limits. The other day, I overheard my father telling a new employee, "My daughter built this company from nothing. Remember that when she tells you something's possible." I smiled, but didn't let him see me. He's learning. We all are. Because in the end, success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes, if you're lucky, those who once stood in your way become the ones who help clear the path for others. The nameplate on my desk reads Alexander Stone Harrison, now. Both names, both legacies, both parts of who I am. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you. It's building something better in its place.